Thanks for joining us on The Creators today. I'm David Hawks, your host, and I'm very happy today because I have a Nettwerk founder, all-around good guy, head of international A&R, and a talented musician as well, Mr. Mark Jowett. How are you?
Good, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be sitting here with you, David.
Well, I'm sitting in your office, which is a beautiful view of Vancouver, by the way, and so many treasured things around your office that remind me of when I worked at Nettwerk back in the day. And you've had an amazing journey of so many years with Nettwerk. It started in 1984, basically. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. 84. Terry McBride, my original partner, and I were working at an import store called Odyssey Imports, which is a very famed, iconic import store. We would basically import records from predominantly the UK at a time when Factory Records was doing phenomenal music and Mute Records existed in 4AD.
Wow.
We were very inspired by all those records, and so we decided to kind of start our own label and release great, bands from around that we were really inspired by.
Yeah.
And at that time, the band I was in, Mauve,
Great band, Mauve. Great Vancouver treasure.
We were signed to a small San Francisco label that went bankrupt. And so we thought, how the hell are we going to release new music by Mauve? We knew none of the major labels would sign us that were releasing at the time, things like Platinum Blonde and all the rest of it. So we essentially took out a $5,000 bank loan, and we released... Yeah, and we basically released Mauve's single called Alibis, and at the same time, Skinny Puppy were looking for a way of getting their music out, and then we chanced upon the Grapes of Wrath, and so we released all three records at the same time. It was, I think, Skinny Puppy's Remission EP, the Grapes of Wrath EP, and then Mauve Alibis.
When you look at Grapes of Wrath and then you look at Skinny Puppy, quite different. So from the outset, you guys were really music lovers of all genres, really.
Yeah, and we've actually really, I think, tried to maintain that. I think it's just who we are. We don't want to try to be restrictive and are just trying to release music that is inspiring to us. At the same time, if you look at a label like 4AD or Beggar's Banquet, a lot of them, they have a kind of iconic look, and we felt that was important to try to, it's a kind of a not a terrible word, but brand the label a little bit so people knew that if they were to buy a Nettwerk record, that it would be a record of quality. Right. And I think that was important as well. And we actually worked with a local artist named Stephen Gilmore.
Right.
And he designed a lot
Great
of our
artist.
Yeah, and he designed a lot of our earlier covers.
And John Rumman and your art department, Carol Ann.
Yeah, and John's still been with us for many, many years now, and he's really helped to instill and keep a kind of thematic design aesthetic going, I think, for the label.
Tongue-in-cheek, people say, the cult of Nettwerk, but it was more about because it was a real vibe that you guys created with the artwork and the artists that you signed, also their sensibility, and also I would say the fact that they're very PC.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think we've always... Some labels are all about the brand. 4AD, for example, is probably, when you think of 4AD, you know really what kind of music is going to be there. But also because we grew to be a management company as well, which is really more about taking care of the artist. We've kind of had a bit of a struggle sometimes of ensuring that the artist's vision and brand comes first a little bit, and trying to find that balance between when are we promoting the label and when are we promoting the artist, and trying to find that balance.
I always thought it was funny that everybody was like, oh, Sarah McLachlan's so new, and look at this new artist, but that was such a slow build for you guys. You guys really took the time to nurture your artists, and just, mentioning Sarah off the top of your head, but, there was Chasing Sarah. Can you let us know exactly what for the record, how did you get Sarah, and how did it work?
Well, it actually really happened initially because I was in Mauve, and we had done a Canadian tour, and we were playing in Halifax. I remember it snowing like crazy, big massive snowballs, and anyway, so basically I went outside, went downstairs to see the backup band, and she was doing one of her very first shows for October Game, and I was just really blown away by the singer. I think she was 17 at the time, had braces, and was really comfortable on stage and had a fabulous voice. And, so we thought, well, maybe this is someone we should sign. At the same time, I had a bit of an ulterior motive because Mauve was looking for possibly another singer at the time. Right. So anyways, we had contact then, and we talked to her mother, but her mother said, it's too early. I think she was, still in high school and stuff like that. So it kind of went away a little while. Then Terry was out, I think touring with Skinny Puppy, and they happened to venture back to Halifax. And I think she was working the door. So they struck up a conversation again, and she was still doing music. So then we thought, well, let's move forward again. But then her mother gave her permission to sign a deal.
So what year was that?
I think it was about 87.
Wow, so really 10 years until she was doing Lilith Fair.
Yes. I mean, when we signed her, she came out here. It took her quite a while to do the first record, Touch, and then we did the second record, Solace, and then it kind of went on. And Arista, we did license her quite earlier on to a bigger label called Arista Records, which was associated with BMG, but they weren't really that interested in her because she wasn't really writing hits at the time. She was writing wonderful material, very inspiring.
And some 12-inch singles were remixed really well, which was, I really think that Rockpool distribution really helped her with Breaking Sarah. She was a dance act almost, it seemed to us.
Yeah, that's right.
She got a lot of years anyway through the club scene.
And then also we just toured her continually, and she loved being on the road, and she was such a wonderful, inspiring live artist. So that really helped grow her audience. And so when we did have a big song, Fumbling Towards Ecstasy, she already had a built-in audience, and so that really helped propel it to a whole other level. And then Lilith Fair came shortly thereafter.
Cover of the Rolling Stone, amazing.
So it had been a long road, but I mean, hats off to her for putting all of that effort into it and all that energy and positivity.
You also had acts like Avril Lavigne come along, which was remarkable. We'll talk about in a minute. But in the interim, you had bands like Severed Heads on the label, Consolidated, MC 900 Foot Jesus. You had a lot of artist power, which I thought was a great hip hop act. You had some really diverse, very underground artists happening at the time, as well as this bubbling on top commercial aspect. So did that kind of keep you guys sane because you always felt you were still being alternative, as it were?
Well, it was very natural. We were really inspired by a lot of music. And there was some fantastic music coming out back then. And Terry and I would get this music from Odyssey Imports and just be blown away by it. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of other labels in North America releasing music like that, other than Wax Trax out of Chicago. So we became kind of a natural home for Chris and Cozy, SPK, Severed Head, Single Gun Theory, and all of these acts. And it was a pleasure to work, to work with them. And there was a circuit, and there was a lot of love for it. It was an exciting time, and music, and it was thrilling to really be part of it.
So Avril Lavigne got sort of presented to you from Arista, was it, or from how did this work?
It was actually from a manager named Cliff Fabry. He had managed another act we were working with named Jennifer McLaren, who was really talented, but unfortunately it went a bit awry, as talented as she was. But he gave us a videotape of Avril sitting in her father's garage playing a Sarah cover.
Wow.
I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting. And she's got a great voice, she seems really natural. So we did a demo deal with Avril, and we sent her to New York to work with a songwriter there, / producer, to come and see what they would come up with together. While she was there, her manager got L.A. Reid to go down, who was the president of Arista at the time, to go down and see her play.
That's huge.
And he was blown away. And he wanted to sign her. But she had a demo deal with us. So we were kind of caught about this because really, she had to deal with us. But anyways, we let it go and let her sign with Arista, and just went on our way. Because at the time we actually had several other acts with Arista, which was
it's very
Dido.
non-selfish of you, by the way, to let her go do her thing, right?
It was to some degree,
but then it came back.
But it was also because we had Dido, we were managing Dido at the time, who was with Arista, and Sarah, and it was a really important relation to us with us. So, anyways, it went away, and then Arista approached us again and said, Avril's looking for a manager now. Wow. She let her old manager go, and so particularly with Terry, they hooked up, and we hooked up with Avril again as her management, and that was just before they put out the album with Too Complicated on it, which was incredible how fast it exploded, really. There's certainly different ways of discovering music. I mean, streaming has opened up a whole plethora of incredible playlists you can discover acts on. I mean, the amount of amazing blogs out there with music from all over the world is an incredible way of discovering music as well. Generally, because touring is such an important way for acts to connect with audiences, we always try to see the act live before we sign it, just to make sure that the act is strong live and committed, and also will be part of a really good team player with us. But as far as discovering the music, the net has changed everything. So recently, we actually just signed, several weeks ago, we signed an act from Australia, from Brisbane, called Mallrat.
That's where my sister lives.
Oh, really?
Mallrat.
Yeah, fabulous act. Great. And then we signed an amazing singer from Copenhagen called Kill J. Wow. And then we just signed a band from Iceland called Vok. Music comes from everywhere, and everybody can bring it in. Yeah. And we really
I remember
embrace
the cult of Nettwerk. Working at Nettwerk, I felt like I was always able to walk a song into you guys. It was great.
Yeah, it's important because people have different aesthetics and different ears, and they may have different ways of finding music. Right. So we always try to engender that sense of, please, open door, bring music in that's inspiring to you.
What can you give advice to in the sea of what's out there in the internet with so much happening? Is there anything extra that somebody can do? I mean, trade secrets, maybe not, you can give away, but what are you really essentially looking for?
I think now as an act, you can't rely on getting signed to a label unless you're a pop act, and you're already working with writers and you've got a good manager and all the rest of it. If you're like a bona fide act doing original music, you need to kind of start your own way first, and that means releasing your own music first, which is super easy to do using TuneCore, many CD Baby, all these different ways, and really try to establish a base by getting your music out there, by touring it, by possibly hanging a publicist to work it, and you need to try and create some kind of groundswell and interest. And I mean, what's really, really key is to try and actually build up your streaming audience.
Right.
Because if a label sees the fact that you have, say, 500,000 audience, monthly Spotify listeners, that's huge for a label.
Right.
Because they know that it validates you and legitimizes you as an artist, but they also know if they're going to invest in money in you, that you already have an audience that is actually earning money for you as an artist.
Right.
So it makes their investment a little safer.
Right.
So labels now often look towards statistics like that. I mean, I hate to say it, because ultimately it starts with the music, and the music you want to make as good as possible. So in other words, try and work with people that you know, and don't be scared to reach out to producers or people you feel can help you make quality music. Right. But once you have that, you need to try and build your audience.
The power of singles and EPs, I wanted to talk about that really quickly too, because nowadays, to go back to it, you can write one hit and you can be a huge star. It seems like your whole career can be based on that one hit, because you sell 10 million copies of one song, you're going for good.
Totally, yeah.
But what about the album experience? Do you miss a bit about the culture of the album experience?
Well, we struggle with that a lot now, because 80% of music in the streaming world that people listen to is off playlists, not albums. So albums potentially can, if people are just listening to playlists, they never listen to albums. And if streaming is the predominant way in which people consume music, which it is, then that's really a challenge, really. On the other hand, albums, I think, are a testament to an artist's vision and how good they are. And I think as a listener as well, it gives you the sense to really get into the soul of an artist and their vision.
Yeah.
And the best albums have, beginnings and middles and ends, and they're a journey, really. So it's a fabulous and important format still.
Now it's come back again.
Yeah.
So can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, really, because when we started out, it was all vinyl, and Terry and I would lug up these huge crates of vinyl up to where our office was, and then lugging it under the truck, and then CDs made their foray. Actually, was it cassettes then CDs?
Yeah, cassettes and then CDs, for sure.
And I remember when we did our distribution deal with Capitol, Dean Cameron, the fantastic president of Capitol at the time, he walked us very proudly around the vinyl plant that they had, with all these spools of tape running everywhere. And then, of course, cassettes went away. It was all CDs. Then there was piracy, generally, essentially. Yeah. And then slowly, basically, vinyl started coming back in, and streaming happened. And now we live in a world where basically it's all vinyl and streaming. I mean, CDs are still there a little bit, but predominantly it's vinyl and streaming.
People found the love again of holding an actual piece of vinyl and looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fabulous format. If you pick up just with if you're a music consumer, which is with the gatefold, and it's fantastic.
You get to explore more. Yeah. So it's not. I'm so happy that came back too, because I was really lamenting it going away. That's for sure. So that's great. So much more for people to discover nowadays. I think it's the happy medium of both worlds.
I agree. And it's great for, I think artists love putting the music out on vinyl, and as a label, it's wonderful to be back in that format.
You had a great band, Cinder Pop. Power pop band. I love them. Quickly, what's happening with them?
Actually, we're just about to put out a collection called Bricolage.
Very good.
And we just recorded 2 new songs for it, using a secret studio in Vancouver. And so we're just finishing those off, and we'll be putting those out probably early summer, something like that, then maybe doing a retrospective show. And actually, one of our first albums, called Violet Gamma Rays, was never actually released.
You taught yourself, Mark, how to play the cello, and through your music career, I never knew you as a cellist, and now you're playing with the Vancouver Philharmonic Orchestra as a cellist, and you taught yourself, how did that come about? You just said one day, that's it, I'm going to do it?
No, I mean, I produced a few albums over my time, and I worked with this band called the Rose Chronicles way back in the day.
Beautiful band.
And
Christy Thirsk, Rich Miranda, I can't remember the other two. They won the first Juno for the best new record, I think, when it was a new category, wasn't it? Yeah.
And worked with a cellist at that time named Peggy Lee, who's an incredibly inspiring cellist, and she plays in a kind of a more modern classical group now called Standing Wave, I think. Anyways, I just found her work so inspiring that I decided to rent a cello one day, and I started to play away with it, and I took some lessons. And I really got into it, actually, and I found that it really kind of opened horizons. I mean, I spend so much time focused on indie music and all the rest of it, which is fabulous, and I really love it and inspired. But this has kind of opened up a whole other world of classical music and the depth of classical music. And then I eventually got to the point where I took a big plunge, and I auditioned for the Vancouver Philharmonic. And
that is a big plunge.
I rehearsed like crazy for that. I knew we were doing Mahler's First Symphony, so I don't know how many hours I spent rehearsing it before the audition. Wow. So I got in the orchestra, and It's hard, and I have to practice about an hour a night.
Great.
But it's really opened up a whole other spectrum of music, and it just shows what a universe of music there is between classical and dance music and indie music and country music. It's just incredible.
Speaking of that, you guys just bought a portion of a jazz?
Yeah, basically we became partners with Jim West in Just in Time Records, which was one of Canada's preeminent jazz labels based out of Montreal.
Fantastic.
That's worked with everybody from Diana Krall to Dizzy Gillespie and many jazz greats.
Great.
And so we're expanding our horizons that way. It's cool too because we're trying to contemporize the catalog by doing remixes and doing a lot of vinyl releases and live records that have never seen the light of day before by some of these acts. So it's been awesome to get in there, and he's a real character. He would be good to interview, actually. He's pretty amazing.
Can you speak a little bit about the Vancouver music scene just then and now, and how do you feel generally as somebody who's been in it for all these years from the core? How do you feel the scene is in Vancouver?
It feels to me like it's making progress. It feels like there's a lot of diverse clubs that are of all different levels. So it allows bands of different levels to play out, which is really, really important in bands' growth, essentially.
For sure.
So it feels to me like it's quite good. I think it would be great if there was a few more labels. Like some infrastructure in that sense, and also that there was more managers, that really good experienced managers, because those are kind of important. Good managers can kind of collate a team of a label, publisher, agent, and really help propel acts forward. And I mean, there's certainly Bruce Allen and Sam Feldman in that group, but it feels like there could be a few more in that way that would really help.
I know. I think about how old you were when you started Nettwerk, you guys, and the leap that you made in your 20s, and then you kind of go, well, I wish that entrepreneurial spirit was around a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's, as I always said, I think I was asked to be an artist manager once in my life, and I said, I don't want to be your ATM.
Oh, right.
So it is difficult, but maybe spread amongst a few people, it would be something to do. So you think it's healthy?
I think it's quite healthy. I mean, at the same time, Vancouver is a bit, people work in silos sometimes, right? You know, you have people I discover sometimes like, it's an amazing mixer. Where's he from? He's from Vancouver. Would I have known that, directly, just from my Vancouver connections? Probably not, but I find out because of a blog somewhere, you know. And Vancouver, I think a lot of Vancouver artists don't necessarily look to Vancouver to promote themselves. They look elsewhere, which is understandable, because to some degree, to be honest, we did that ourselves. You know, we tried to ensure when we started that we looked elsewhere, to America, to the UK, to Belgium, Germany, bigger markets, that to kind of make our footprint broader to make sure we survived. But we didn't.
That's for sure.
Yeah, but we didn't necessarily look in our own backyard. And I think there could be a bit more of that in Vancouver with some of these really talented artists. Media, there could be more media here as well.
I have to say, I would really like to see some proper written media in this town a little more.
True.
I really miss good editorial music coverage.
I agree.
I think everybody does. Okay, a couple things real quickly. Advice for an artist wanting to get signed. I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but can you say if I wanted to start a music and I was like 18 years old or something and I thought I had a good thing, how would I quickly go about it other than the Spotify thing? And you said earlier getting noticed. If I wanted to really get out there,
I would look to try and find people that you can hook up with that will help your music, whether that's working with people at a music school, whether that's reaching out to local producers, other musicians that you aspire to in the city that you think are really good, and really try to improve the quality of what you're doing to make it as good as it possibly can be. I think that's a start. Make sure that your image is really good. You know what I mean? Like so that you don't want to be obsessed with your image, but if you can come up with something which is compelling and intriguing and sparks additional interest, that's a great thing too. And really try and create a net of people that will be supportive of you. And so that is a good way of kind of really getting going. I think to do it only on your own and just without really reaching out and not being open, it's really hard to have success. It's through building connections and reaching out that I think you can start to lay a foundation and then from which to build on.
Well, 33 years of catalog now, is it, for Nettwerk?
Yeah, remarkably, it's 33 years.
33 years, so many amazing artists, and you just, you touched on Chris and Cozy and Single Gun Theory. I have to go look for some of this. So where do I find it? How do I buy it?
Well, the fantastic thing is now with streaming, it's all up there in the cloud. So, through Spotify, through Apple Music, all of this music and all this catalog is available. And that's the great thing about the streaming world. I mean, labels like Beggars or Mute, some of these labels that have been and around when there was such the phenomenal music of the 80s, that's all available online now. And in fact, we're now repressing vinyl for a lot of our earlier catalog releases by Delirium, Skinny Puppy, things like that. So we are making a lot of that available.
So nettwerk.com, nettwerk.com,
exactly.
basically, and find it there.
Yeah.
Mark, thank you very much for this time. And you know me, I love Nettwerk stuff for many years. We could talk for hours. It's a half-hour TV show. But thank you for coming on and being inspiration. You're never going to slow down, are you? You're going to keep doing music forever.
I'm building my own little studio now on the other shore, and I'm hoping I'm going to start to be able to be more reclusive and just focus on studio work. But that's probably a few more years down the road.
Fantastic. Mark, you're a gem, and we're very lucky to have you in Vancouver.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you.